Hi everybody, it's Susan from Sunrise Quilt Studio and welcome to week 42 of the Stash Buster block series. This week our block is called 4 Crowns. It is a 12-inch block. I've made this one with 3 colors and it has a lot of pieces in it, but we're going to break it down into units to make it more manageable, and I think this is one that you'll enjoy. So let's get started. Here are the fabrics that you're going to need to make the 4 Crowns block. For color 1, which is going to be your dark color, you're going to need 4 pieces that are 2.5 by 4.5. You'll need 2 pieces that are 4 7/8 inch square, and then you're going to cut it on the diagonal, just one diagonal. And then you need 4 pieces that are 2 7/8 inch square. And for color 2, which would be your medium, you're going to need 1 square that is 4.5 inches square, and you'll need 4 that are 2.5 inches square. And then for your background, which is color 3, you're going to need 2 pieces that are 2 3/4 of an inch, and then you're going to cut those on the diagonal once. You'll need 4 pieces that are 2 7/8 inch and 8 pieces that are 2.5 inch. And on these 2 smaller squares, you're going to draw a line diagonally on the wrong side of each piece, and that will be a guide for your sewing. So to make the 4 Crowns block, the first thing we're going to do is to do the square in a square unit. So you see here we have a square and it's inside this white square, and that white square is inside this teal square. So we're going to make this whole unit here, which is, you know, the bulk of your block, at least half of it, and then we'll do these pieces that go around the outside. So we're going to take the color 2 4.5 inch square, and we're going to fold it in half, and we're going to press, just finger press to find the center. I'm going to do that on the opposite sides, and we will do it on the other sides here in a minute, but first we're going to start with these opposite sides. And then we're going to take the background triangles that we cut out of the 3 3/4 inch squares, fold them in half on the base of the triangle, the long side, and that's also your bias edge, so be very careful. Fold that in half and then finger press right there in the center, and have your wrong sides together when you do that, so that your right side of the fabric is facing out. And then you're going to line this crease up with the crease that you pressed in this square. So I usually just will tuck it right in there, and if you want to, you can pin it in place, or you can just hold it in place, and then you're going to sew that seam. So I'm going to go ahead and pin it, and then we'll take it to the sewing machine and sew it. Okay, I am using a 50 weight thread, and I have my 1/4 inch piecing foot on, and we're just going to sew this with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And I have my stitch length set at 2.5. And I'm just being careful not to stretch the bias edge. Okay, now I'm going to rotate it around to the opposite side, and I'm going to do the same thing with this triangle. Just fold it in half with the wrong sides together. Finger press the center mark. Tuck it in the crease that I made on the square. And I'll go ahead and pin this one. And the pinning isn't necessary, it's just an added aid for you. We'll sew this one. Okay, now next thing we need to do is to press these triangles out. Okay, we've got those pressed, and now we're going to find the center of the square again on the two sides that don't have a triangle on them. Just flip them around. Finger press there. And lay that down for a minute, and then I'm going to take one of the triangles and put them wrong sides together, press the center, and tuck it in again. So we're just going to repeat these steps for these two sides of the square also. And just keep your raw edges lined up. Okay, now I'm going to press these two triangles out, and then we'll do a little bit of trimming. Okay, when you get all those triangles sewn on, you know you've got some dog ears. So we want to trim those off because those will just create bulk and can affect the accuracy of the piecing, so we're just going to trim them off. Okay, our next round will be, we're going to put the color 1, the dark triangles on now, and so we're going to fold these wrong sides together and finger press. And now that we already have a center marking with the point of the square there, we're going to use that to line up the triangle just like that and pin that. Now when you sew this one, you want to sew it from this side, not that side, because you want to see where those lines are crossing on your piecing here, and you want to stitch just to the outside of that, so within the seam allowance, just by 1 or 2 threads. So I want to line this up, and we're going to sew this piece on. So I'm getting close to that point, so I'm watching and making sure that I don't stitch too close to it. I don't want to stitch right on top of that area where it crosses either, because that will cut off the tip of the point, and I want to be able to see that. So what you want is that look. You want to be able to see the point, but you don't want to see any of the background, or if there is any background, you just don't want to see a lot of it. So that is your goal, is to get like that. So now I'm going to do the opposite side. So I'm going to take another triangle, fold it with the wrong sides together, and finger press right there. And then I'm going to go on the opposite side and line that up with that point. And then I'm going to pin it. I'm going to pin it this direction so I can see it. I want to sew from this side. Okay, see how this one turned out. That one turned out okay. So now we're going to press, and again we're going to press away from the center and towards the triangle. Okay, my heater's about to kick on my furnace, so I'm going to have to voice over the rest. But now we're going to do the other 2 triangles. The next step will be making the flying geese units. So we need the 2.5 by 4.5 inch rectangles and the 2.5 inch background squares that have the diagonal line drawn on those. And then you're going to place one on one side of the rectangle with right sides together, and then you're going to sew right on that drawn line. So I'm just going to place that there to go from the outer corner to the center. And then we're going to repeat that for all of the flying geese units. And I'm just going to chain piece all of those together so they're all connected. And then I'm just sewing them one right after the other. And there is a 4 at a time flying geese method that you can use, but I prefer this method myself. Well, the furnace kicked off, so now I can talk. The next thing I need to do is to trim off the triangles on this side. So I'm going to trim them down and leave a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I'm just going to use my scissors. You can use your rotary cutter if you want. And I dropped one down the front here. Okay, now I need to press, and what I'm going to do is to press this triangle out. So we're going to press it away from the main part, so that'll be pressing towards the dark. So I have all of these pressed, and now I want to take the other triangles and do the same thing. When you take your square with your line on it, you want that line to go from the top center of your flying geese unit to the lower bottom corner. So you want it to go that way. You don't want it to go this way, because if you do, what you'll wind up with is, let me see if I can, yeah, you'd wind up with this, and that's not what you want. So make sure that it is going from the top center to the bottom lower corner, outer corner. So we're going to line up raw edges and then sew right on that line. And then we're going to just repeat that for all 4 flying geese units. Okay, I'm going to cut these apart now and trim the triangle off so that I have a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, for the half square triangles, you want to take the 2 7/8 inch color 1 and color 3. So you have a background and a dark. And you want to line those up, right sides together. And the line that you drew, the diagonal line, of course, will be showing. And this time, instead of sewing right on that line, you want to sew a 1/4 inch away from it on both sides. So I'm going to chain piece these all together, and then I'll flip the chain and do the other side. So we're going to do one side at a time, and using my 1/4 inch presser foot, sew down one side, and I'm going to move that out of the way a little bit. Oops. Okay, now I'm going to just swing it around, get myself a little slack here, and then sew down the other side. And I'm going to cut them apart, and then I'm going to cut the squares apart right on the line that I drew. So I'm going to cut right along that line. And once again, you can use your rotary cutter or you can use your scissors. And then that will give us 8 half square triangles. Now I want to press these, and I'm going to press towards the dark this time. Okay, so I'm just going to lay them down, dark side up, and then press them open. Now I'm going to trim off the dog ears on these. And I do have a video out on how to improve the accuracy of your piecing, and this is one of the tips that I give, is to trim off your dog ears because they can throw off your accuracy. Okay, get all of these done, and now we're ready to lay out our block so that we can sew the pieces together and finish it up. Okay, so I'm going to start at the top and put one of the color 2 squares in place, and now I need a half square triangle, and it's going to go like that. I need a flying geese unit that will go like this. Another half square triangle that's going to go this direction, or this direction, and then another square. So let me scoot everything down just a little bit. That's better. Okay, now another half square triangle. It's going to go like that, and then we're going to put in the square and a square unit. That goes there, and over here we'll do another half square triangle, and this one's going to go this direction. Flying geese units, and the color part is going towards the center of the block, so we'll put that on both sides. And then half square triangles, and this one is going to go this direction, and this one will go that direction. And then our corners, and then these half square triangles, and then the last flying geese unit. So this is the way it lays out. And first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to sew these sides units together so that we can sew them onto there. So I'm going to go ahead and take those to the sewing machine and start sewing on them. Okay, I'm going to sew these pieces together. So we're doing a half square triangle on each side, And at this point I don't have to match up any seams or points, but I will eventually, but right at this point I don't need to. So I just have to watch my seams and try to keep them from flipping over. Okay, so now we have that, and I'm going to do the same for the other side. Okay, there's that one. Okay, so now I'm going to press, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to do that. When we sew this unit onto here, we're going to need to watch these points here. So I want to be able to see where those lines are stitching across. So I'm going to press towards the half square triangle units. So I'll do that on both. And now I'm going to sew these units to the side. Okay, I have 3 points I need to match. I've got this one on the flying geese, I've got 2 on the flying geese, and then I have 1 over here. So it's going to be hard to match all 3 of them, but we're going to give it a try. So I'm going to go ahead and pin the ends right there, and then I'm going to line up the center here, and where those 2 lines cross there, I'm going to put a pin through there at that point, and it'll come out on this side. Now if this was a light fabric, I would draw a line there with a pencil. I'm going to do something like that. So where that pin is coming out, I've got a chalk mark there, and I'm going to try and follow that. So I'm going to go ahead and pin this in place like that, and I'm going to sew from this side where the flying geese are showing, so that way I at least will get 2 of these points. Hopefully I'll get that one too. So let's go ahead and sew that and see how that turns out. Okay, so I'm getting close to that point. We'll keep our fingers crossed on that. Okay, let's see how this works. Okay, so it'll look better once I press it, but there is the point of the flying geese, here is the point of the square, and here is the point of the other flying geese, and they're not bad. I'm pretty happy with that. So now let's do the other side, and I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to lay this aside, and I'll press that in a minute. And next thing I need to do is sew the top row together. So I'm just going to sew it piece by piece. So I have the outer corner and the half square triangle, and I'm going to add the flying geese to it. Okay, and then do the next half square triangle. And then the corner. Okay, now I'm going to do the bottom row, and okay, here's the top row, and there we go. And then we'll do the bottom row the same way. And here is the bottom row. So now I need to do some pressing. Okay, now when we sew this row to this row, we've got points to watch too. We've got this one and these two on both of these sections. So what I want to do is to press away from the flying geese, and on this one I want to press towards the outer corners. So all of the seams on this side are going to go towards my right, and these seams that go to the left, so they're going to go out. You start from center and they're going to go out. So I'm going to go ahead and press those. Okay, and since this seam is pressed out, I want this seam here to be pressed in. So we're going to press it flat and then press towards the center. And let's press this one. Okay, now I'm ready to sew on the last two rows. Okay, on this last row, these the two rows, the top and the bottom row that we're doing here, we have a lot of points to match, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4 just on this strip, and then we have to match this point to this one. We have to watch this point here so we don't cut it off, and then we have to match this point to that one. So what I'm going to do is to turn them right sides together, and I'm going to match up the seam lines. I'm going to match the points on the end first. So the pin is going to go through the point here. It comes through there, and it's going to go through this point. So slide those two together. Make sure my seams are nested. And I'm going to pin that. So I'll do the same on this side. And bring my pins a little closer. So if you want to go through the back on this one, you can do that. It might be a little bit easier. And then that comes through the point here. And then it's going to go through, and pull it through a little bit more. And it's going to go through right here where that point is at the end. Right there. Then slide the seam, the pieces together, match up the seam, and pin that. Okay, now these points here we'll be able to see when we sew them, and they're not matching up with anything, but I'm going to sew from this side because there are so many points on this side. So, but I still don't want to cut this one off. So I'm going to line this up, my raw edges. I'm going to put my pin through the point, and then it comes out here. And now next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get a chalk pencil right here, and then I'm going to mark just right where that pin comes out and draw a line there. So I know I don't want to go on this side of that line, I want to stay on the seam side of that line. So I've got that in, and I'm going to go ahead and pin that. Okay, so now I'm ready to sew. Okay, now on these rows, you know, press them whatever way you want. I'm going to try and press them out again. And that looks okay. And do the same here. Okay, I have 4 of the 4 crowns blocks up on my design wall now. One of them is different colors. It's a green and a teal instead of the navy and aqua. But this is what they would look like if they were set side by side in a quilt top. It does make a secondary design there in the center right there. It makes a 4-patch square and a square type design, and I think that make a really graphic quilt. I think that would be a nice modern quilt if that's something you're looking for. So the square is symmetrical, so it doesn't matter which way you turn it. It's not going to change the look. The only thing you could do to change the look would be like I did and use different colors in a couple of the blocks, you know, and like every other block would be a different colorway, or each block could be a different color, you know, however you want to do that. So this is the 4 crowns block, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. For more quilting ideas, click on the video links, and to keep up with my latest projects, click on the subscribe button. I hope to see you again soon.